All right, moving into the second part of critical thinking. Critical thinking part 2, here we go. All right, ways to enhance your emotional intelligence. Next, we're going to talk about changing perspective, looking at the same issue with different eyes, paying attention to new or different details, and also making inferences, or what I like to call educated guesses. Let's take a look at the photo on the left. So we see here we've got a fish bowl with a red fish swimming in the fish bowl, and to the left of the bowl is a cat. To the right of the bowl is a baby. So based on our perspectives, or what we know about cats, is that cats tend to like fish. And they don't necessarily like fish to play with them. They like fish because they like to eat them. Now, be careful about what I'm saying here. This is my perspective looking at this picture, not yours. So when I look at that cat, I see him thinking, I want to eat that thing alive. That looks absolutely delicious. But when I look at the baby, that's not what I think at all. I don't think that baby wants to eat that fish. I think that baby's actually very curious about that fish. And that baby is interested in watching that fish swim around the bowl. And the last thing that that baby would want that cat to do is probably to eat that fish. In fact, I don't even know if the baby's even aware the cat is there. And also that the cat is aware that the baby's there. It's a pretty funny picture on perspective. Let's take a look at the picture on the right. So you have these two characters here. The character on the on the left clearly sees four, or from his perspective, clearly sees 4 blocks. And the character on the right clearly sees 3 blocks. From our perspective, or at least again from my perspective, I can see how they both are right. How the character on the left sees 4 and the character on the right sees 3. Can you understand, however, from where they're each standing, they each think that they themselves are right? That the character on the left thinks that he is correct and that he sees 4 and that there are indeed 4 blocks. And the character on the right thinks that he is correct and that there are indeed only 3 blocks. Now, from our perspective, we can't quite tell who is right, but we at least have some insight into their problem. So a change of perspective actually could help them solve their problem. This photo maybe you've seen before. I've seen it several times before. And when I was preparing this presentation, I first looked at it and I saw only one thing. Then I started to read about this picture and I was challenged to find a second thing, but I couldn't find it. It took me a long time. I'm going to give you another second. When I first looked at this picture, I saw an old woman. Some people, when they first look at this picture, see a young woman looking away over her shoulder. I saw a profile of an older woman. Now you might say, well, young and old, that's very subjective. How do I know who's young and who's old? So my perspective is just based on kind of what I've learned about what defines youth and what defines age. So our perspectives may not be the same on that. But there are 2 different women depicted in this sketch. And some people clearly see a younger looking woman looking over her shoulder with a small nose. And other people see a profile of an older woman with quite a large nose and a protruding chin. Excuse me. I'm curious to know which one you see and if you can see both. Okay, discussion number 2. This will also be on the discussion board, and you are to post something in this discussion number 2. You do not need to reply to anyone else's post unless you feel you'd like to. For discussion number 2, we have a midterm coming up in this class at the end of October. What inferences or educated guesses can you make about what will be on the midterm? Think about it. What questions do you think you will be tested on? I would like you to put yourself in my shoes. Try to put yourself in my perspective. What do you think I would want you to know? You are going to post at least one thing that you think you should study for the midterm. You are welcome to post more than one thing if you'd like, but you only need to post one thing. You do not need to respond to anybody else. The thing that you post does not need to be written in a complete sentence. You could simply write critical thinking if you want to. But remember, if someone else is reading that, or if you were going to study critical thinking, what specifically would you study about critical thinking? Would it be the 8 steps of critical thinking? Would it be ways to develop your emotional intelligence? What would it be about critical thinking? So think critically and make some inferences for discussion number 2. I'm going to pause right here before we move on to the next section. Critical thinking part 3. Let's keep moving along. Another way to enhance your emotional intelligence and also your critical thinking skills is to ask questions and also to have doubt. So before we figure out what questions to ask, let's think about what different types of questions there are. First, we have questions of fact, things that are really not debatable, like who is the President of the United States? Currently, there is only one President of the United States, Barack Obama. That is a fact. There's no debating it. There's no sense debating it. There's questions of preference. Things like, what is your favorite color? Do you prefer Mickey Mouse over Goofy? That kind of thing. And then questions of judgment. Things that use information that you're given to create a question or yield an answer based on your particular judgment and expertise. For example, should all teachers think about students' learning styles? So this is going to be your third discussion. What do you think? Should all teachers think about students' learning styles? What are the 5 things that you think would be important to include in your argument? So for example, if you think yes, teachers should think about students' learning styles, I want you to list 5 things that you would include in your argument to support that. If you think no, I don't think teachers should think about students' learning styles, then you want to think about 5 things that would be important to include in that argument. Here's the next thing. You have to find another argument that's opposite of yours and respond to it. There's specific directions on the discussion board on D2L. Have fun with it. Let's talk about doubt and uncertainty. Do you know for certain that you're going to pass this class? Do you know for certain that your car is safe in the parking lot? Do you know for certain that someone won't laugh at your shoes? Well, I'm not in a position to pass or fail this class, but if I were a student, I can't know for certain that I'm going to pass until the teacher tells me you have 0 chance of failing this class given the work that you've done to this point. But let's take number 2, because this is real for me. I have no idea if my car is safe in the parking lot. I'm not certain on that. I feel fairly certain that it is. It's in a fairly open area, under lights, in a staff area where other cars park and I see police services. But that doesn't mean my car is completely safe in the parking lot. But it also doesn't mean I'm not going to drive my car to campus and that I'm not going to park my car in the parking lot. I've used some information that I know, and I've taken the risk. I'm also not certain that people won't laugh at my shoes. But you know what? I'm going to take that risk. So one way to develop your critical thinking and your emotional intelligence is to learn to understand when the certainties are driving your decision making and when actually they're keeping you from making a decision. Developing that ability to determine that will help you in your critical thinking. Let's talk about problem solving, and this is something we do every day. And honestly, I think these 5 steps make it seem so easy. You identify the problem, you narrow the problem, you research and develop solutions, you analyze the solutions, and then you solve and evaluate the results. Easy, right? But how many times have you had a problem that you can't even get past step 1? That's sometimes the hardest part. Again, enhancing your emotional intelligence, solving problems, all of these things help you develop your critical thinking and will help you make you better at solving problems in the future. Let's take a look at step 1. What are the symptoms of the problem? What's going on? How do you know it's even a problem? Sometimes when I work with students in my office, I find out that the problem that they're having is actually not a problem at all. After we talk about it, they realize, oh my gosh, we don't even need to go through steps 2 through 5. The problem is gone. It's not actually a problem at all. But let's suppose it is. We need to figure out what's the root of the problem. So again, working with a student in my office, what's going on? What's at the base of this? What's causing this problem? Can we figure that out? That will help us figure out how to solve the problem. Number 3, how many choices do you have? I say this so many times to students. The first choice you have is to do nothing. So that's how you have to figure out if it's worth solving the problem at all. And then we go from there. But including that do nothing is really important to make you also feel like if this is something that's worth solving. Figuring out which of those choices is going to work best and also why it's going to work best, and then implementing that solution. Now, here's the thing that people don't often do. They don't often go back and evaluate the results. What worked? Why did it work? Is this something I could use again? Usually problems in life are not completely unique, or at least the solutions are not completely unique. Usually when we walk through something one time, we can use that same formula to solve the next problem. Think about that the next time you're faced with a difficult problem or situation that you need to solve. Okay, let's move on to making intelligent decisions. Just how do you know? How are you going to do this? For me, it boils down to the who, what, when, where, why, and how model. Who does my decision impact? Is it just impacting you, or is it impacting others? How will you benefit from this decision? And is it legal? That's a key. What will result of my decision? What's the outcome? What's going to happen after you make this decision? Why do you even have to make this decision to begin with? Is this really even something that you have to think about? Where will this decision take you or your family or friends? And also, this is a key, when does the decision need to be made? I had someone emailing me last week asking me for my help with something. And after I immediately jumped in and started to help my colleague, and then after a couple emails I wrote and said, when is this due? And she said it wasn't due until the end of November. And I said, I really would like to help you with this, but I can't help you with this right now. I've got some other things that I need to do. So just keep that in mind. It's okay to say, what's the deadline? What's the timeline for this? Sometimes giving yourself some more time will help you make a more intelligent decision. Fact versus opinion. This one is tricky, and this happens all the time. Take a look at this quote. In most cases, people tend to lie if they think that they are protecting themselves or someone that they love. What do you think? Is that a fact, or is that an opinion? I'll be honest. I took this right off the internet. It was also something similar in our book. It's an opinion. There's no basis to this. There's no research that shows that this is true. There's nothing written anywhere that supports this with fact. I don't know. I've lied before. Have you lied before? Have you always done that to protect someone that you love? Not always. It's not always about that. So sometimes people give an opinion that's so strong, that's said with such confidence, that we're led to believe it's fact. Think about things that people are saying to you. Run them through your fact mill. How is this true? How would this person know this? Could this really be? Before you root to it yourself. In the end, you need to be seeking the truth. How many times have you stopped short because you went on information given to you by someone that you trust, but not necessarily someone that was an expert? Something like, sign up today, receive this free tote, or get 10% off. Hurry, supplies are limited. Really? Are the supplies limited? How do we know that? The second bullet is something that truly happened to a student that I had. She said that she couldn't go to college because college loans were over 25%. She really trusted her father. She looked up to him, so she believed him. But she agreed with me that he's definitely not an expert in the field. He owns his own business, sure, but he doesn't know the first thing about financial aid. So, you have to ask some questions sometimes and seek the truth so that you can make appropriate decisions. What's up next is a video regarding thinking creatively and being resourceful. I think many of you recognize the gentleman here on the screen, Stephen Curry. If you're having trouble viewing this video, I'll put a link to it outside of this presentation. But I think for me, this really sums up thinking creatively and being resourceful, the final step of developing your critical thinking.